mysterious. Welcome back to Cryptid Mysterious. I got 2 more new Bigfoot encounters for you. Before we jump right in, if you haven't already, smash that subscribe button for me. I appreciate that. Let's get right into the first story. This one comes to us from Valerie. She says, "The craziest thing about this sighting was the location in which it occurred. Considering all the areas in Yosemite that one would consider desolate and lightly traveled, the Bridal Veil Trail would not be one of them. This particular trail is predominantly hardpack, with very little elevation change or anything else for that matter. There are a decent amount of rock climbers in the area and a fair amount of foot traffic from all kinds of people who want to see the falls. In fact, a lot of single chicks come here in hopes of increasing their chances of marriage, according to the Indian legend. At any rate, Carol and I were relatively alone this day in May of 2007 when we were working our way down the trail. The 2 of us have been on this trail numerous times, as we have on many of the trails in Yosemite. We were coming up on an area where there's a creek that's strewn so heavily with boulders that it's hard to even say it's a creek. As we were approaching, we heard the sound of a large rock cracking down on top of some other rocks. There was no question in our minds whatsoever as to what we had heard, and we knew it was coming from the creek. I don't think it was but 15 seconds later we heard yet another sound of boulders tumbling against each other, like we had the first time. The 2 of us were very unsure as to what we were about to walk up on, and began to slow our roll, gradually coming up to where the sound was emanating from. As we were closing in on the creek, we heard yet another large cracking sound of a boulder tumbling. Now, this really had our attention because the boulders in this creek are more than likely in 15-pound plus range. Some of them are probably over 100 pounds or more, and this is a boulder field with water running through it. Who or what was tossing boulders around is anyone's guess at this point. We crept up to the point where we could now turn our heads to the right, viewing the creek. There are a lot of low-lying trees in here, of quite a few varieties. The creek has some trees growing upright through the boulders, and is enveloped somewhat like a tunnel by trees on both sides. In the direction we were looking, the creek and boulder field meandered into the trees about 75 feet away from where we were crouched. It was almost the apex of where the creek disappeared to the left into the trees that we saw a Sasquatch. The creature was standing directly under an area of the canopy where the sun was shining brightly on its back. It was standing on an angle where we were seeing its back and left arm in a hunched over position. It was holding what appeared to be a very heavy rock, like it was nothing. It then flipped this boulder to its side and kind of knelt down, reaching into the water with its hand. It seemed to be feeling around in the creek, and then it put its hand to its mouth. Thankfully, it wasn't facing towards us. For only a few moments later, it took a step and it picked up another boulder, flipped it to the side, and bent down to reach into the creek again. This time it used its left hand, which we could see, and it put it to its mouth. The creature was about 100 feet away from us, but because of the size of its hands and the smallness of whatever it was grabbing, we couldn't see anything. Mind you, I couldn't believe that the 2 of us had even stayed there for this amount of time and not run away. It was just a few seconds later that we heard some people talking and laughing coming up the trail from where we had. As soon as we heard the noise, the Sasquatch turned its head quickly to its right, which, again, was not looking at all at us, and took a couple of quick steps into the trees and was gone. About 2 minutes later, these three dudes came walking up on us and said, "How you girls doing today?" Carol said to him, "You dudes just scared off a Bigfoot." They were like, "No way, man. Are you kidding me?" Then Carol said, "Way, bro. He was just standing right there, flipping boulders around and eating something. As soon as you dudes started laughing back there, he heard you and split." The one dude said, "I'm so sorry, man. Where was he?" I told him, "Don't be sorry, because we were more than likely 10 seconds away from running out of here. You actually did us a favor." Then one of these guys walked up to where the Sasquatch had been. He was trying his best not to break his neck on the rocks. When we watched this dude trying to make his way back to where the Sasquatch was and how hard it was, it made me realize how easy the Sasquatch had done it. It was no chore at all for him to move around in these boulders. This dude tried to pick up some of the rocks, and we thought he would drop a nut in the process. The Bigfoot was picking them up and holding them while he was looking around in the water. And just after that, this guy said that there was a Bigfoot print right next to the creek where he was standing. Eventually, he made his way back over by us and they left. This thing was at least 8 or 9 feet tall, from what we could guess. And it was picking up these huge rocks like it was holding a football. It looked like they were no effort at all. The hair in the direct sunlight was reddish blonde, and the blonde could have very well been white or even gray. The sun was so bright on its back that it was actually creating a glare. It was actually a hard thing to take in as we watched. I was kind of in a stupor, like I was waiting to wake up from a dream. It's very hard to explain, but that's the way it was. For the time that we were watching, it felt like I was in a trance. I say that because I can't even believe that the two of us were able to just sit there and not run. I have no idea how this type of thing can even be in this area and stay out of sight. It's not like we're in some big dark rainforest, and yet there it was. Yeah, no kidding. How the heck do you just sit there and watch it? 100 feet away? That's not too far away. And then those dudes, they must not have believed him, because why the heck would they walk down there to the rocks right where that Bigfoot was just a second ago? If only they knew what they were getting themselves into, potentially. Well, let's move on to the next one. Before we do, if you haven't already, smash that subscribe button for me. Appreciate y'all. This one comes to us from Gladys. She writes, "My husband is long since passed, but at the time the two of us were taking a canoe trip down the Chattahoochee for the day. We'd begun the journey in the morning from the Jones Bridge, with our end goal being the Chattahoochee River Park. Depending on the river level and how much paddling you want to do or not, this trip, which we've done before, can take somewhere between 9 and 12 hours. Time was about 5:30 in the morning. We were about 2 hours into the float when we began to slowly drift around the bend in the river. On the bank to our left, my husband and I saw a large blue heron taking a fish from the shallows and swallowing it whole. The two of us put our binoculars to our eyes in order to watch the bird. We had our eyes fixed on this bird for probably 2 minutes as the canoe continued to drift in the current. When I finally had taken my glasses down and looked ahead over the river, no sooner had I turned my head than my eyes became fixed on what appeared to be 2 figures standing on a shoal on the river's edge. At that moment, I didn't realize that I was looking at one small creature and the larger one bent over at the waist. Both of them had their backs turned to us in the canoe. My husband still had his binoculars fixed on the heron. When I whispered to him, "Look." The current was pulling us along at a pretty good clip, and we were gaining on whatever these creatures were fairly rapidly. When I first saw them, we were more than likely 200 yards away and closing. When the larger one straightened up, and I now knew it was large, it twisted its upper torso to the left. I realized later that I was looking at the breast on its chest, which I didn't fully comprehend at the moment. When she had turned to the left, she must have caught a glimpse of us in her peripheral vision, because what had initially started out as a very casual movement suddenly turned very fast as she fully turned to look at us. This larger creature, which we both realized later was a Bigfoot, reached down quickly, grabbing a hold of the little one, picking it up like a mother holding a small child, and she took about 3 or 4 steps and was gone from sight into the trees on the bank. It was only maybe 2 minutes later when the drift had brought us right to the spot where they'd been sitting. We used the paddles to hold our position and take a good look at where they had been. We could now see that there was in fact a shallow water shoal through the maybe 1 foot of water. It was evident that she'd been digging around in the river bottom, possibly for some fresh crustaceans or the like. I have no idea, but the bottom was definitely disturbed in a number of areas. As we looked into the trees, we could see nothing of the 2 Bigfoot, but the trees were so dense at this point that they could have been right there hiding, and we would have been unable to see them due to the vegetation along the river's edge being extremely thick and lush. It was after the fact that I came to the conclusion that the smaller one must have been no more than 3 feet tall or so. At that height, he didn't reach the level of the mother's waist when she was bent fully downward. It was at least a foot or more shy of that level. When the mother had stood up and fully turned to see us, it was then that I had a good look at both of the breasts and knew that it was a female and its babe. The mother was easily well over twice the height of the little one, making her some 7 or 8 feet tall. The mother's body was large and yet very cylindrical in its shape. From the width of its thighs to the width of its upper chest, I would have to say that it was about 3 feet wide, and as I say, very uniform in its dimensions. The youngster's hair was almost black in its coloration, whereas the mother was more of an auburn or reddish color. The sun being very bright, there was absolutely no variation or guessing involved as to what exactly we were looking at. It was definitely 2 Bigfoot, one great and one small. As we sat in the canoe looking over the shoal into the woods, I could now see that she had taken only several strides to cover almost 20 feet in order to exit the river, and that with the juvenile in her grasp, of course now having done much research and snooping around to learn what others have seen in regards to these creatures, I must say that this female was in no way in appearance as those said to be like bodybuilders. You could evidently see that she was powerful as a bear, if not more so, but did not give the appearance of being a muscle-bound beast by any means. She was just thickly bodied and very burly, and I'm sure that she could dispatch you or me or anyone else if you messed with her cub. That's what we saw on that day on the Chattahoochee River. Well, that was a good story. I'd like to get up there on the Chattahoochee River. It's been a little bit since I've done some kayaking. What do you think of today's stories? Where y'all watching from? Anybody canoed down the Chattahoochee? Is it a good time up there? I say up there because I'm in Florida. Yeah, what do you think? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you've had any encounters with Bigfoot or any cryptid, shoot me an email, cryptidmysterious@gmail.com, and I'll see you in the next one.